Are you out in the wilderness when it comes to choosing a program that is actually going to help you fulfill your fitness goals? Of course you are. That's why you're clicking on this video. Today, we're going to go through Boostcamp's high volume program, one of my favorites, one that I have run, but I will say one that is a little bit more niche. So we're going to walk through in depth each day. We're going to try and answer as many questions as you might have when you come across 70s Powerlifter by Bromley. I think it's a great program, but I do think it has very specific uses. So let's talk through the overall of the program. We're going to go day by day and hopefully help you make a decision on whether or not you want to run this, and more importantly, whether or not this is the program for you with your current goals and your current training needs. As with all Boostcamp programs, there is a great layout about the program. So let's look at what 70s Powerlifter is all about. It's a 4-day-a-week program, upper, lower, focusing on one main compound lift for each day in the program. You have three-week volumizing waves and three-week intensity waves. That means you're going to do 3 weeks, reset, 3 weeks, reset, all the way up to a full block of training. We are working through percentages here. There is not a lot of emphasis on RPE in this program. We are doing that because when we're working in a high volume environment like 70s Powerlifter, we have to be a little bit more sure of our intensity ranges. You can get into a lot of trouble on higher volume programs if you are not very good at choosing your RPE. For example, if you come in and you have 3 sets of 15 on the bench press at an RPE 6, a rational person may say, okay, that's a lot of volume. RPE 6 needs to be RPE 6. But I know that you guys are not rational people. I'm not a rational person. We want to push weight. We want to move weight for whatever reason. It could be egocentric, or it could just be the way that we were trained to train. So if you walk in and you think an RPE 6 is actually an RPE 8 and you throw that on the bar and you try and do 3x15 at a certain point with this style of programming, which emphasizes volume, you will burn out. And you will most likely burn out faster than this program is designed for you to burn out. We need to be as locked in our intensity so that the intensity and volume structure are equal, or at least balanced. If there's a seesaw of training between volume and intensity, you want to be right in the middle. If one is higher than the other, most likely you're going to run into recovery problems, not going to be able to get through the whole program, or not get the progress that you were expecting. And then you're going to blame the program when in actuality, it was your fault. It wasn't the program's fault. So Bromley has taken all the guesswork out. We are focused on percentages, 60, 65, 75%. Now, this does mean that you need an accurate representation of your 1 rep max. So how do we find out where our estimated training 1 rep max should be? Take your best triple, even your best set of 5 that you've done in the past month to 2 months, and enter it into any of the estimated 1 rep max calculators. It is not an exact science, but that will spit out an estimated 1 rep max that you can use as your training max. We're not talking about your best comp performance. We're not talking about your last 1 rep max attempt, because those can be fickle things. You may have carried a lot of fatigue into a meet. You may have not carried a ton of fatigue into the meet. Using an estimated 1 rep max or a training 1 rep max can help you really get through the day-to-day, the grit, the minutia of going through each training session. So I would recommend that you try and do that. If you have a top triple that you've done in the past month, you'll be totally fine. Enter that into an estimated 1 rep max calculator and go from there. Another very important caveat in the program instructions, by the way, read the program instructions on Boostcamp when you are getting into a program. I have seen so many people just lambast programs for saying that they don't include deload weeks, when in the programming instructions it says, much like this, deload weeks are not included in the written program. However, take a deload week as needed. If you didn't read that, you'd be in big trouble, because you'd be going for 16 weeks without a deload if you needed it. So understand, deloads are going to be your prerogative. When I ran this program, what I did was 3 weeks on, 1 deload off. I think that may have been a little bit too much. I would have loved to just do probably 6 and then a deload, but for where my training was at the time, I couldn't really find that balance. So understand where you have had the most success in the past with deload weeks. If you are someone who accumulates a lot of fatigue, maybe you don't recover intra-session, or you don't recover week to week as well as you would like, be honest with yourself. Understand that taking a deload 3 weeks in is going to actually be beneficial to you if you are pushing that fatigue. If you are not, and you're kind of sandbagging your workouts, you may be able to get away with way more training before you need a deload. It is all about personal preference and more specifically, what your body can handle. That means you have to be honest with yourself. Throw your ego aside. If you are someone who needs a deload more frequently, take those deloads. In the long run, it is going to help you. It is going to keep you healthy. It is actually going to help you grow because you will be able to generate more volume. You'll be able to generate more power. You'll be able to actually train in a way that is going to help you grow if you are not overly fatigued throughout the training cycle. And finally, we have a disclaimer about the amount of work on this program. And this is the main thing. If you are not someone who is accustomed to or willing to become accustomed to a ton of work, this is not the program for you. I cannot make this any clearer. When I ran 70s Powerlifter, I was absolutely ground into dust by the amount of volume that is on this program. What may be beneficial for you is running kind of a bridge block, a 3-week block where you take 2 sets off of what is actually prescribed in 70s Powerlifter. You run that for 3 weeks to kind of acclimate to a higher level of volume, and then you jump on the actual program the way that it is written. Just an option for you. I think that that would have helped me a ton more if I had done that. So if you are someone who really gets buried by a ton of volume, you have to respect that fact and you have to understand this program is going to be, one, incredibly difficult for you. So if you're willing to do that, maybe you're in a calorie surplus, maybe your sleep is really good, you're living in a no stress environment and you will be able to recover to the best of your understanding, give it a go and see how it feels. But if you are just coming off of a meet and you are really run down, really beat up in terms of fatigue, in terms of just stress is all over the place, sleep is bad, you know, like me, maybe you've become a new parent and you just jump in and say, let me give this a shot. It's not going to work for you. Trust me. I have done this. Learn from my mistakes. Be ready for the amount of work on this program because it is a lot. Okay, day by day, we are starting day 1, bench. It is a lot of bench press. We are starting with the barbell bench press. That is the standard competition bench press, however you competition bench. That is your preferred finger width. That's your arch. That's everything mimicking your competition bench press. We're going to do 3x10 at 60%. Already, 3x10, for a lot of you powerlifters, you haven't touched 10 reps since you first started in the gym. That is a lot of volume already. And that's our first exercise. So just to understand, this is going to be a lot of work. 3x10, I like this framework. For me personally, when I'm doing high volume, when I'm training clients, high volume is usually anywhere between 6 to 8 for me. That's just my personal preference. Bromley is a huge volume guy. And I understand why it is written this way. Volume can be a great driver of gains. For me personally, I like to kind of find somewhere in the middle, a little bit medium volume, not so much low volume like some of the Mike Mentor guys, not some of the higher volume, much like 70s Powerlifter, somewhere in between. I do find a ton of value in 70s Powerlifter. If you're someone who has spent a lot of training time in the 1, 2, 3 rep range with your competition lifts specifically, getting out of that mold, switching things up a little bit, going to a higher rep range can be extremely valuable. So we've got your competition bench press. We're moving straight into wide grip. When we're doing wide grip, I honestly think just one finger out on the rings is probably your best bet here. You could go all the way to max competition grip if you are used to or comfortable with that. If you have good shoulders, if you have strong shoulders, healthy shoulders, you can get away with that. For me personally, going all the way to max competition grip is really, really difficult. I bench with my 3rd finger on the ring, so I just move out to my 2nd finger. If I'm feeling frosty, I will try and go to max competition grip, but usually it's just 2nd finger, 2x10. We're starting with 2 sets here, but as you can see on week 2, we're going up to 3. Week 3, we go up to 4, and our bench press goes up to 5. So this is a volumizing wave, like we talked about in the beginning. Each week, you are going to add work sets to the work that you're doing. So understanding that it is so incredibly important to get your intensity down. If you're using RPE here, which is what is programmed, RPE 6 to 7, please be honest with yourself. You'll see as we jump to week 2 on the same day, we're adding a set, but also we have 6 to 8 RPE. So now we can make more of a wider choice. What I think I did wrong when I ran this program, and you can watch some of the vlog series that I did on this, I'll link that down below in the description. When I jumped from week 1 to week 2, I also jumped pretty heavily in my intensity. So while week 1 may have been a really solid RPE 6, week 2 was more an RPE 8. And I think that pummeled me. I probably should have stayed more in the 6.5, 7 range, but you live and you learn. Then we're moving to incline bench press. This is a ton of pressing. This is, 7 sets of bench press at 10 reps. That is a ton of reps of bench press. Still RPE 6 to 7. Please be accurate with your RPE. Then we're going to do a little back work. Bromley, he comes from the old school. I really like the way that this is programmed. When we push, we also pull. We get a little bit of that balance. So we're going to do lat pull downs, T-bar rows, barbell bicep curls. 3x15. We are up there, folks. We are going to be pushing volume. How many times do I have to say it? Understanding that when we attempt these, supplemental movements, we still want to be at a level where we're getting good work done without completely burning ourselves out. This is another place where I think a lot of people can run into trouble. You get to your supplemental movements, your 3x15, and you say, you know what, I'm really going to push these accessories. People tell me to push my accessories. You should push your accessories, but always keep in the back of your mind, what is the accessory for? If you are pushing your accessories to the point where you cannot recover and operate and do your actual training on the next training day, or when you cycle back to week 2, you're wasting your time. So yes, push your accessories, but understand what the accessories are there for. 3x15, if you are throwing a ton of weight on here, you're going to get buried at some point. Everyone is going to reach their fatigue limit. It's about understanding what your fatigue limit is and working within those parameters. So that's day 1. Huge amount of bench press, understanding really what your estimated 1 rep max is for your bench press, and being honest with your RPE selection on your wide grip and your incline barbell bench press are going to be key here. Upper body day was a chore, but let me tell you, when I ran this program, the lower body days were what really did it for me. And you can just look and see, squat, 3x10, 60% of your 1 rep max. I am a 600 to 620 pound squatter. 60% of my 1 rep max absolutely crushed me when I ran this. This is the importance of an estimated 1 rep max. When I got in here, I think I dropped 10 to 15 kilos off of my estimated 1 rep max for squat, so that I could be a little bit more comfortable is the wrong word, but set myself up for a little bit more success. I felt that doing this much volume at the intensity that I was at with my top end of my squat would not be beneficial, to say the least. So understanding, if you are 2 years, 3 years in, and maybe your 1 rep max is not touching these bigger numbers, you could probably get away with just implementing your actual 1 rep max. But don't be afraid to drop down a couple kilos, a couple pounds. Set yourself up for a long-term success. This is a long program. You are going to need to stay in the program for a long time to yield results. So 3x10 at 60%, that's a tough one for me. That's why I dropped it down a little bit. Then we're going to wide squat. Now here's the thing. You do have the ability to mix and match some of these exercises. I'm not a huge fan of wide squatting. I have really tight hips. I find myself not being able to even get into a close position to competition depth when I do a wide squat. So what I did is I just replaced it with SSB. You have a ton of different options, but always try and stay within the framework of what the author of the program is intending. So you can make swaps, you can make mixes and matches. If it says wide stance squat, maybe don't switch it to like a close stance hack squat so that you can kind of get more hip involvement. At the end of the day, it's your program. You got to run it the way you want to. I would say you can definitely switch things out, but try and stay true to the purposes of the program. As long as you're staying 2x10, 6 RPE, I think you'll be fine. Front squat, it's hit or miss for me. I like front squat a lot when I'm working with clients who are having a really hard time staying rigid in their upper back, staying rigid, I guess, with their core throughout the squat exercise. But I don't really find that it has a strong ability to carry over actual quad growth, especially for someone like me who squats in the 600s, but can only front squat in the mid to low 3s because of the shoulder impingement that I feel with it. So you've got to, kind of find your way through here. I really enjoyed a belt squat on this day. Again, another way to kind of mitigate a little bit of fatigue. So there's some wiggle room. Leg extension, lunge with the barbell, and then sit-ups. I'm going to be honest with you. I never did any of the core work on this program. That is a me problem. I hate working my core. That is definitely a me problem. I need to get better at that. But, let's be vulnerable here together, you and I. Leg extensions, 3x15, lunges, 3x15. We're sticking with high volume throughout. You're going to see a pattern. That's day 2. The big things to focus on day 2 is just really, again, dialing in your intensity. 3 by 10 at 60% doesn't seem like a lot until you're on set 3 and you're on rep 8 and that bar's feeling really heavy on your back. So really, give yourself some grace with this. Day 3 is another upper day, and we're doing overhead press. Now, you may be asking, why the hell are we doing overhead press? Bromley is originally strongman competitor, dabbles in powerlifting. Overhead press plays a bigger role in strongman, but I think one of the biggest disservices that a lot of powerlifters do, especially in the off season, is not train overhead press. I think it has a great carryover to the bench press. I think it's great for shoulder health more so than anything else. And who, doesn't like throwing some heavy weight over their head? So I like training overhead press. If you don't, this is probably not a program for you, because this is a very big part. This is 1/4 of the training. This is 1/4 of each training week. You're focused on shoulders and overhead press specifically. You may be able to find something that, tailors itself a little bit more to your needs. If you want to bench press a second time, maybe look for something else. But if you're in an off season, train the overhead press. I think you'll get a lot out of it. There's still some bench press on here, but it is a shoulder day, basically, shoulders and triceps. So we're going to do overhead press 3 by 10, 60%. This is one of those where most people don't know what the 1 rep max is for overhead press. So you're going to do a little bit more guesstimating with this. Like I said, taking a triple or a set of 5, plugging it in. Then we get to wide grip. Now, because this was a repeat of day 1, what I did was I just changed this to like a Larson press, another bench press variation that I really enjoyed. For me, that's a Larson press or a close grip bench. That could work really well because you're doing a wider grip on day 1. And if you want a little bit more tricep work, understanding that you can mix and match there. And then behind the neck push press, another one that I shifted, I took the push out. I like the behind the neck press. Again, this is one of those that falls in and out of favor. Some people hate the behind the neck stuff. I find that it's really good for shoulder health, so I like to keep it in there. You can do whatever you want. Dumbbell raise, skull crusher. Look at that. 3 by 15, rope push down. Same thing. Our volume is up there. That is day 3. Finding ways into the overhead press here as a pure powerlifter is going to be your struggle for this. You're going to need to, maybe if you're doing that bridge block, kind of testing the overhead press a little bit, making sure that your form is solid. We have a lot of practice with squat, bench, and deadlift. You may not have a ton of practice with your overhead press. So give yourself some time to warm up on this. Give yourself some grace, maybe lowball it a little bit for this first 3-week wave so that you can feel a little bit more comfortable. And finally, week 4. We've reached our deadlift. We are doing a ton of deadlifting, just like we were doing a ton of squatting. 3 by 10, 60%. And guess what? It just creeps up from there. 4 by 10, 62.5. And we go and go and go. Volume. How many times can I say it, folks? Volume is the key here. We have to understand what our 1 rep max is going to be. Then we've got Romanian deadlift. Absolutely fantastic exercise. If you swap everything else in this program, stick with the Romanian deadlift. I think this is top of the line in terms of getting your deadlift stronger, in terms of growing your glutes, your lower back, your hamstrings. This is a fantastic exercise. I hope people are doing this. This is GOAT, absolutely the best deadlift accessory. Even if you are a sumo deadlifter, keep this one in here. And then good morning. One trick with a good morning, if you are at a gym with an SSB, use that. I find that so many people are losing their mind trying to keep the straight bar on their back while doing a good morning that they're really not focused on the movement itself. Throwing an SSB in there takes all the guesswork out, takes all the shelf work out, and you can just focus on getting your hinge, really sitting your butt back, using the movement to the effect that it is meant to be used. I think that if you're not using an SSB and you hate the good morning, switch over and see how that feels. Bent over row. This is a little bit light on back work, in my opinion, between the lat pull downs on day 1 and the bent over rows here. You're not going to need much more in terms of overall work, but just know this isn't a huge amount of volume, especially in your supplemental movements. Sorry, not volume. This isn't a huge variation in your supplemental work. You're going to get a ton of volume, but you're not going to be using a ton of isolation movements. It's just 3 on each day, as you've seen. But you're going to be getting more than enough work with your compound main movements that you will still grow tissue. It's not like you need to be, doing 8 to 10 different movements because you're not touching so many muscle groups. With all of the compound movements that you're using, you will cover those bases. So don't worry about that. Bent over row, 3 by 15. That can be pretty tough. I know a lot of people like to stay in the 8 to 10 range for the bent over row. So this is going to be another one where you're going to have to give yourself a little bit of grace. try and feel out the movement a little bit more, go a little bit lighter, especially on this first week than you think you should be. And then you can always adjust when you get to week 2. Hamstring curls, I like the seated version. You can use either one. Leg raises, another one that I skipped. Don't skip it. Be better than me. That is 70s Powerlifter in a nutshell. My overall thoughts on this. I like this program a lot. This program doesn't very much work for me. I like the structure of it, and I think that there is value in this program if you are someone who tolerates more volume than I do. I am really not great at tolerating volume. I'm a little bit heavier than I want to be. I burn out a lot faster. My cardio is not where I need to be. These are all me problems. That does not mean that this program is not a good one or that you should not give it a try. Bromley knows what he's talking about, and he knows how to write programs. One of the better YouTube content creators that we have out there in terms of getting people stronger, leaner, more muscular. He's a solid dude, and he knows what he's talking about. So I'm not going to come on here and say that 70s Powerlifter is a bad program, because it is not. What I will say is that it did not work for me specifically because I burnt out way too fast. So that is my caveat for you. If you have run this program, please let me know what you thought of it down below. What do you think of this style of video? Just me kind of getting in the weeds about more of these training things. I think this is kind of the direction that I would like the channel to go to. So let me know what you think. We're going to bring the vlogs back once it gets a little bit cooler in my gym. My brain was melting out of my ears when I was filming the vlogs. But if you want a little bit more on 70s Powerlifter, more in-depth on each day, I did a whole vlog series on it. You can click on this right here to see that. I will see you in the next video. Get strong and stay strong.